Good morning, everyone. Here it is, a Monday morning, and I want to just let you know that Live and Learn, I will never post another YouTube video as private again. I realize now that I need to make them available as public, and I was so happy that I had the informational video on the lesson plan out to you on Friday. I left town and I was out in the mountains with limited internet access. So I did receive your emails, but I didn't respond to them. So again, that was my goof. And what I'm going to do is, the lesson plans are due tonight in the assignment, safe assignment folder by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. I want to talk to you, what the video is talking to you about is your reteach, your enrichment, and your adaptations, which seems to be a question that many of you have had. So if you would like to take a look at that after I talk to you about what those three components of the lesson plan actually are, and I will give you an extension and have your lesson plans due to you by, or due to me by Wednesday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you've already submitted your lesson plan, remember this is a learning process and I'm going to be providing you with feedback. So if you ended up with something completely different than what I'm looking for in those parts of the lesson plan, then don't be alarmed either. We'll work through that. But this information I think will be good for you as far as teaching and in the future and what you're looking for in your lesson plans. I've had some great questions come in and I wanted to go over those questions with you as a group. One of them is, how long should my formal observation teaching experience last? When you're watching me, Mrs. Unruh, on Skype, how long should the lesson last? And I guess I'll just say it needs to last as long as you, as an effective teacher, would have it last, as long as you're watching and seeing the modeling of your mentor teacher, as long as her basic lesson plans and then with an activity would last. I realize that you're concerned about your following the T-Core evaluation form and meeting the criteria and doing well. My biggest concern is watching and saying, was this a productive, valuable, useful experience for those students that are sitting in front of you? For the early childhood students, was it going to be something that was really time well spent for them? So in answer to that question, I have seen some great formal observations and lesson plans that last anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes. If you're going to be doing an activity where they're creating something or they're showing you for the assessment what they have learned, and you're doing that, say maybe you had large group and you had your anticipatory set and you went through the lesson and then you had your closure and then you went to small groups, then I would like to watch that as well. So some of the lesson plans I observed have lasted anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. So there's no set time. I just want it to be an effective lesson. So don't get caught up in worrying about that. So that was one of the great questions that I had. I will take this time to remind you, if you haven't scheduled your initial Skype, those are due by Friday, October 11th, and I will be out of town attending. I'm a board member for AEYC, and I will be attending the professional development in Manhattan, Kansas. Maybe I'll see some of you there. So I will not be in my office Friday. So if you don't get it in by Friday, we could go ahead and wait till Monday, which would be putting us on then the 15th. But the 15th of October is absolutely the last time for the virtual students to schedule their online initial Skype. And I would also like for you to be scheduling your formal observations. So we've talked about the time limit. I want to go ahead and just take another brief look. We'll take a look at the actual lesson plan template. Remember that the standard that we're looking at standard 9. Let's see where we're at on this for just a minute. Sorry about that. under the KSDE Common Core Academic Standard, that's our Early Childhood Unified Standard. Remember, these lesson plans are used for Early Childhood Unified, K through 6, secondary, so some of the verbiage won't always apply to us, but the ECU I've provided in many different places. It's in your syllabus. It's Standard 9. That's our math standard. That in Lesson Plan 1, 2, and 3 goes under the academic standard. So it will be Standard 9 and then put the verbiage in. So you've got that. Then you'll go to the Early Learning, the KSDE Early Learning Standards, which again are provided. I've got them in your math lesson plan. They're under week 4. But go to the KSD website and pull up the Early Learning Standards for math, and you'll have the same ECU math standard for lesson plans 1 through 3, as well as the same benchmark. Because if you're working on a concept of ordinal numbers 1 through 10, patterning, geometry, shapes, then you'll have the same benchmark for all 3 of your lesson plans. Indicator probably will stay the same. There could be a change in that. I am specifically looking for the ABCD objective, your content knowledge objective, to be well written and to make sense and be something that you can use to create a solid lesson plan, as well as how that assessment at the end matches your objective. So those are really the 2 key components of the lesson plan in this internship that I'm looking for. So those are the things that we'll focus on. So make sure that you're using the correct verbs for knowledge, skills, and reasoning levels, and that you have a assessment that makes sense and is going to see where the students are at after you have completed your lesson. I'm not going to talk to you today. Again, we'll talk a little bit maybe at the end when I go into some of the adaptations for the ELL. Key vocabulary, any words that you're going to be using that the children might not be familiar with, that you're going to be building background with. Include all of those words and be sure that you talk about those in your lesson. Manipulatives, literature, the technology, and the other materials, they'll be highlighted in those colors throughout your lesson plan. And remember that the technology in early childhood is applicable to use hands-on manipulatives, but I need to see those in the lesson. We've talked a little bit about the anticipatory set and those essential questions that you're going to ask. What is the question when you start this lesson plan that you're going to pose to the students that's going to start them thinking about the concept that you are going to be teaching to them? I suggest you write your essential questions down on note cards or on a sheet type them out on a sheet of paper. I see a lot of people put them in their lesson plans, then we get caught up in the actual lesson and we forget to ask those questions, and they're really, really key. So make sure that you do ask the questions before. There's a knowledge, skills, reasonings. That's your essential question. You'll ask one during. Again, knowledge, skills, and reasoning level. Those are all listed at the end of your this lesson plan document. And then at the end, in your closure, what questions are you going to ask? Integration across and within, again, highlighted in the appropriate colors. Content area, integration across would be science, social studies, gross motor, fine motor, any of the other content areas that you're bringing into reading and language arts. Certainly if you're doing a read aloud in your anticipatory set, there's your integration across content area. Integration within, we would be talking about shapes, and then you would have them count the number of circles, count the number of squares, and that's integration math within. You're talking about shapes, but then you're bringing in counting. Okay, so then what you're going to do, there's your questions during, you'll have your closure. How are you going to review the major parts of the lesson that you just talked about using those essential questions that you'll be talking about? And we're going to spend the next 3 or 4 minutes talking about your reteach, your enrichment, as well as the first adaptation, which is going to be student who is an English language learner, whether you have or feel that you have a student that's an English language learner or not. That is your adaptation that you're going to be using for this particular lesson plan. So when you do a reteach, you won't do the reteach and the enrichment during this actual lesson plan. This is planning ahead for what you will do. Reteach is simply for students who are at that zone of proximal development. They did not get the concept. What are you going to go back to do to teach that? Or there's students that you see that absolutely after you've done the assessment, they have not reached this level of being able to understand this concept. How are you going to reteach this? Students who have mastery, and they're not going to get mastery in a one-day lesson plan, believe you me, this is very much an ongoing, but students who have reached that mastery level, they were correctly able to identify a circle 3 out of 5 times, they don't need to have the reteach. So you're not doing this in the lesson, but you're making it available, teaching the same concept again to the students who did not get that. Enrichment, a lot of times it seems like people think that's for students who are advanced or who are gifted. This is for all of your students. What are you going to do throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year that's going to enhance the knowledge, supplement it, reinforce the knowledge that you provided to them during this lesson plan? And then I wanted to take you to a new document when we're talking about the student who is an English language learner. And I can tell you right now I'll probably run out of time in 5 minutes, so if this ends abruptly, this is the last thing that I'm going to be talking about today, but it's important. I've provided you with a document that states that this is an English language learner teaching strategies that really work. So these are also appropriate strategies to use with all students. When you're working with students who are English language learners, it's very important that you provide them with lots and lots of hands-on activities and visuals. So those are the adaptations that you're going to be bringing in. Simply, I will provide the student with visual aids, pictures of what I'm talking about, because remember, they've got expressive language typically. They might be going through the silent period, but they don't have expressive. They have receptive language. Hope that's what I said. But they don't have the expressive language to tell you what they are thinking or what they know. But they certainly will be able to point to different pictures, use different types of media to express what they're thinking. When we're working with students who are learning the language, it's vital that we provide them with sufficient wait time. That way they'll have time to formulate and process the answers in English. So it's very important that we allow sufficient wait time. So an adaptation for an English language learner, I will increase the amount of wait time from 10 seconds, which we know is the appropriate amount of time to wait for our English speaking students or typically developing students. I will increase the amount of wait time to 15 seconds. And then I will not make them feel pressured or embarrassed if they don't have the response. I'll simply smile and say, I can see that you're thinking about that. I'll come back to you later. Whether they understood that or not, it's just showing the other students that you're allowing them time to do that. So again, I talked about, hopefully, about respecting that silent phase where even if the students aren't expressing language to you, they are processing, they are learning, and we have to just give them time to work through that. Here are some modifications for English language learners that will also work in the realm of adaptations as well as modifications. So you might adapt the pacing time that you're providing to this student. You're going to admit certain parts of the assignment. If it's a 3-part process, you might narrow it down to they complete the step 1, and then you'll go back with them at another time later on down the road, and they'll get step 2 and we'll get step 3. We look at the environment, and in early childhood, assigning a peer buddy, it's great for teamwork and building friendships. It works more effective, the peer assistance in an older classroom setting, so that's not one that I would particularly recommend. Reinforcement and follow through, absolutely. Lots and lots of positive reinforcement that's very, very concrete and specific to offer to students who are just learning our language. We're going to give immediate feedback. One of the best things you can ever do is, when they're ready, have them repeat the directions. At the time that they're able to do this, have them repeat the directions back to you. Repeat, review, drill. I do it, you do it, we do it. Explicit instruction, fabulous for English language learners. Sometimes you have to completely go to a lower instructional level. You're going to decrease the difficulty level of the assignment. That doesn't mean we expect less, it just means that we're respecting where that student is at. Simplify your language under presentation of subject matter. Simplify your language. Use manipulatives. These are all going to be extremely effective strategies for ELL students. Thank you.